Hi and welcome to 3 Minutes On. This week we have castle enthusiast Jacki Badger talking about castles.
They say that an Englishman's home is his castle, and I really wish that were the case. I just have to make do with visiting castles, but I visit castles a lot, because thankfully, as Eddie Izzard once said, we're basically tripping over them in Britain. Castles first really appeared in Britain with the Normans, who came over here, conquered us, and then decided that they should probably have some way of actually keeping power. The way of doing that was to build whacking great castles, the most famous of which is the Tower of London. The Normans also introduced the idea of the motte and bailey design, which was how a lot of old castles were built. What this means is that there was the motte, a whacking great mound of earth. On top of that, they'd put a building called the keep, from which they would spy all around the lands and see what was going on. Then there was the bailey, which was the sort of courtyard section within the castle walls. They built like that for a couple of 100 years, but then people started getting fancy with stone and with great halls. But you can still see this castle design in a lot of really good old castles, like at Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight. It's just also now surrounded by a lot of other buildings, including the one where Charles I tried to climb out of his window when he was kept hostage there. Speaking of Charles I, it's actually his fault that a lot of our best castles are now semi-ruined. After the Civil War, Oliver Cromwell, who hated all things fun, decided that a lot of castles had to go. So he went round the country demolishing a lot of them. If it's not ruined, then chances are it's more of a stately home than an actual castle. The best castles are also really frighteningly high up. This is partly because they've got great big walls built to keep people out, and also because they've got a massive moat. What this means is that when you're walking around the ramparts on the outside, there's a massive drop down one side. And as somebody who loves castles but also hates heights, because I've had a number of panic attacks at places like Goodrich Castle and Ludlow. But moats aren't always the castle giveaway that you'd think they are. Just because you see a moat, don't assume you're at a castle. I'd put a moat around my house if I could, but unfortunately I live in a semi-detached property and that's not really practical. Most of the best castles are owned by English heritage. It's a quirk of the early heritage movement that they ended up with them. They came out of the Ministry of Works, who were kind of brought into being to protect ancient monuments. So this means that a lot of what they have is old castles that are kind of in disrepair and don't have roofs, for instance. The National Trust, meanwhile, actually started off trying to protect the countryside, but then a load of aristocrats ran out of money and gave them their houses instead. So if the National Trust claim to have a castle, they're probably lying. If a castle is still in private ownership as well, then chances are, by definition, it's going to be more of a stately home. There are some places like Arundel where you still have the old motte and bailey bit of the castle, but then later additions have come along and been tagged on, which means that really the integrity of the castle is lost. And a final thing, if you're not sure if you're at a castle or a stately home, then have a look at the playground. If you're at a real castle, then the playground will either not exist or just be rubbish. If, however, there's an amazing playground shaped like a castle, then you're probably at a stately home.
Thanks Jacki. If you'd like to speak for 3 minutes on something, email amy@3minuteson.com, or if there's a topic you think we should cover, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Tuesday.